Are you going to apologise to me now?
Well, it's nice to be back by unpopular demand. No, I'm not, because, of course, what's going on is tragic, and it would be inappropriate to say anything other than that for those people that maybe didn't get the treatment that they expected to or should have. But the reality is that there isn't some perfect alternative when you're in the middle of a pandemic, as we were for 2 or 3 years. And if you hadn't had those lockdowns, then you would have had far more people getting COVID, far more people getting seriously sick before the jab was possible, and then you would have had a situation where the NHS was on its knees.
Where's your evidence for that?
Well, it's quite obvious, because you see it in countries that couldn't cope with this. You know, you look at Sweden, which has a higher death rate per population.
Have you looked closely at Sweden?
Does. Yes, it has a death rate
Sweden?
double Norway next door.
Have you looked at Sweden's excess deaths now?
Well, you know that did Sweden have more deaths than Norway next door?
In the early days, yes, it did.
Exactly.
But actually, when you factor in excess deaths caused by lockdown and you look at the limited damage to the Swedish economy, I'm sorry, Sweden is coming out of this thing swinging. They followed the correct public health policy, which was always what we were meant to do. And I think it's very wise that you've raised Sweden, because we should be looking at Sweden. And I was always propagating for a Swedish model.
Well, I mean, clearly it failed because they had so many more deaths and their economy struggled during the pandemic. But do you know what this shows? Is that if we'd had far more COVID cases, you wouldn't have been able to deal with cancer. But it also shows the selfishness of those people who refused the jab. Because there are people that chose not to get the vaccine, who took up hospital space, who took up beds from people that were struggling with cancer.
The vaccine does not stop transmission.
Is what is wrong.
The vaccine does not stop transmission. I'm sorry, I feel like you are so pig-headed about this. You can't admit that you were wrong. You were wrong on lockdowns, and you were very wrong on the vaccine. The vaccine is a personal choice that might protect vulnerable people or people who particularly need it because of health needs. But it certainly has nothing to do with transmission. Surely you've even seen people like Deborah Birx in the US now admit that they overplayed the vaccine and admit that the vaccine does not stop transmission. Why are you so pig-headed when it comes to these facts?
The vaccine is a public responsibility to get, because you owe it to the rest of society to do your bit. And the truth is, there are people who chose not to get the vaccine, who took up hospital beds, who took up finite resources in the NHS, and then they stop. When those people, that end up sick because they refuse the vaccines, take resources from people with cancer, how is that justified?
But Belinda, this isn't making sense. I literally feel like I've got in a time machine and we're back in June 2021 and Benjamin's got the wrong script.
I know. I think he's in denial. But it's so much more dangerous than just missed appointments. I think there's something like 10 million missed appointments during lockdown, and we're going to see the consequences of that over the next sort of 5 years. It is having your immune system constantly beaten up, not just by being exposed to COVID, but the media bashing us up about not taking the vaccine. When most of us didn't need the vaccine. So we had COVID, then our immune system got battered by the vaccine. Then I got COVID again. I had my immune system battered, then I got the vaccine, then I got COVID, then I got the third vaccine, and then I got COVID again. So a lot of young adults are suffering from a lot of immunocompromised issues.
We have unleashed health hell. And actually,
on the young who didn't even need it. I think it's a great betrayal of our young.
It's a huge betrayal. And actually, I've been looking at the figures for New Zealand at the moment. The most vaccinated country in the world, the most isolated country in the world. Do you know what? And this is official. They are, in their winter right now, having 7 times more illness, 7 times more illness than 2019.
NHS consultant, one told me the other day that I've actually got the message here. She WhatsApped me saying that she's seeing more and more of these young people in their 20s and 30s having immunity issues because they've been battered so much by the virus and then being taken booster after booster. Why isn't this being talked about? We've destroyed the immunity of our children. They haven't been able to build up that defence that we all got in the 80s and 90s.
And Carole, what is a great disgrace is you had folk like the positive professor Carole Sikora, who I was speaking to in March 2020, warning of this, saying the messaging and your policy is going to cause, I remember he actually said, a ticking cancer time bomb. Here we are, and it's exploded.
When Ben talks about the beginning of the lockdown, I sort of agree with him, because we didn't know what this virus was going to do. However, when people like Carole Sikora started to come out and say, we are going to lose thousands and thousands thousands of lives. I started to look at that. And what I realised was that the NHS was blind to everything else. In protecting the NHS, we were putting other people at risk. What I found amazing was, why did we spend multi-millions of pounds on COVID hospitals and then never use them? Because the bozos inside government actually didn't plan how they were going to staff them. So we wasted millions of pounds. Those COVID hospitals would have been perfect to put everyone in there and keep everyone else who was suffering whatever else in the main hospitals. There are now currently 300,000 people with cancer waiting for referrals and treatment. 60-odd, what's the figure? 60-odd percent, 40,000 of those have waited 60 days after a GP's referral. So even now those people aren't getting the kind of treatment they deserve. You know, a full year and a half after lockdowns are finished, they're still not getting the treatment. But when, you know, and it's all very well the media saying, I mean, you know, you did say all of that at the start, but you're not a doctor, you're not a professor. Carol Sikora was, and lots of people like him were saying the same thing. And the government was saying, let's look at the science. Well, they weren't listening. They were only listening to one kind of scientist. They weren't listening to people like Carol
and that's
Sikora.
the point.